Welcome back, my friends. We are in Beard Banter episode 12. And if you didn't just chuckle as you came on, you're probably not human. But I have with me Carrie Richardson from R&R Consulting. She's a good friend of mine. And I think for any other ladies that come on this show has just absolutely ruined their intro for time to come, right? Like, is that a fair assessment, Carrie?
Well, I like to fit in. I like to be part of.
Oh, it's so good. No, it's so good. So, it reminds me of Kyle Hanselman did something similar, and I have a picture of it, but he got a fake beard from his kid's bedroom, I think. And then he had his wife's like ski cap. And so it was like this white cap. And so he went with a bald hat and a beard. And I snagged a screenshot of it. It's like my when I'm away picture now.
Nice.
But anyway, so Carrie, welcome to Beard Banter. You are my first female guest on Beard Banter, so huzzah, welcome. I'm super happy to have you here, and I've actually followed you so long that I actually call you Carrie Simpson most of the time, and, and I screw up and do that from time to time, even though you are Carrie Richardson, and with a very good friend of mine, Ian Richardson, who comes on my stuff quite frequently and may be able to join me. You've got your first comment though, so Ryan says, "Brilliant, Carrie." Um,
Happy to yeah. Just happy to be here.
well, so tell me about you've been in the channel for a minute, at least in my experience, and did it all start with Managed Sales Pros?
It did when we started Managed Sales Pros. Managed Sales Pros wasn't called Managed Sales Pros. We
What
were
did it start as?
Cold Calls. The company was called Cold Calls Lead Generation, and
Okay,
the old website might still be alive. I don't even know. Cold
it's in
Calls.
archive.org.
It's
Have you
somewhere.
ever? No, it is in archive.org. I guarantee you that.
So
So
it's somewhere there. We were just like I started Managed Sales Pros from my kitchen table in Canada. I was 9 months pregnant, and I had been a kickboxer and a personal trainer at the time. I'd been in sales before. I went to rehab. I mean, there's a whole long story about how that came about, but I thought, well, what am I good at? Really, I didn't necessarily like want to go back to really aggressive personal training and fitness conditioning right after having a baby, and I didn't want to have to put my child in daycare and
yeah.
trying to figure out like what am I good at? What would people pay me to do? And I thought, well,
Well, and especially with personal training, that can be like a on-demand level type of thing
it
sometimes,
was
right? And then it's like no
terrible.
planning capable. You can't just say you almost have to put them in full-time daycare and then hope you're working. Like,
Yeah.
anyways, a little
And you got
tangential,
to
but
work
yeah,
splits, right? Like I
sure.
might have a client at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., teach an 8 a.m. class, teach a 9 a.m. class. I mean, there's not a lot of your body's not going to handle like 8 hours of teaching classes a day
Yeah,
for more than 10 years. And my knees are regretting many of those life choices now. But and I
fair.
thought like, well, I'm good at sales, but I don't really want to do I went to rehab, right? So I haven't had a drink in 17 years. And
Congratulations.
thank you. And I didn't want to get back into that kind of like boozy lunch lifestyle. And I thought,
Sure.
well, nobody seems to like cold calling, but I like cold calling, and I hate driving. I don't really have the personality for farming, right? Like I'm a
Okay.
one and done cold caller. Like you
Sure.
take the appointment or we're finished. That's it. I
Fair.
started calling people and asking them like, hey, I'm cold calling for other businesses. I've got 20 hours a week available. How many hours would you like? Right.
Yeah.
And then finally somebody said yes. And then they referred me to an MSP. So an MSP was actually my second client. First one was a
Okay.
marketing company. The second one was a company
So
out of
this was just
Winnipeg.
nondescript cold calling. Didn't matter. There
Didn't
wasn't
matter.
necessarily an industry focus. Okay, that's
No.
cool.
No.
Yeah.
So somebody was like, hey, they were sharing a cold caller. That's how this all came about. They had
Sure.
the marketing company was sharing the cold caller, and the cold caller just fell off the face of the earth one day. And they're like, well, what are we going to do? And he said, oh, well, I'm paying this
I'm
company to
I'm with
cold
this
call
other
for me.
company. Yeah.
So the marketing company says, hey, I've got this friend, sells managed services. Could you sell that? And I'm like, yeah, of course. I'm like,
Of course, I've got it. I'll
managed
figure it out.
services?
Yeah.
What the hell is that? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh,
At
it's
that
my
time,
team
it didn't
report.
really exist fully. Like, what year was this? Do you know?
What, 10 years ago? So what, 2014,
Okay. Yeah. 11,
15?
12, 14.
No, so
What year
maybe
is it
not that
now?
long ago.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So I
but
don't
even if
know.
you think about it, the MSPs are fairly developed at that stage, though. My point
Well,
is,
my
so
daughter is
pretty, yeah.
10 years old, so the business is 10 years old. That's how.
Okay, fair enough. As per the 9 months pregnant statement before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so fair. That
Yeah.
makes total
So
sense.
that was that's how it all came about. And then he started introducing me to some of his peers out of the, well, it's called Evolve now, but that's kind of how I got
Yeah,
started. And then I just started going to events, trying to
yeah.
figure out like what is this all about? And then I realized like every IT business owner I met was having the same struggles. And I was like, that's
They
it.
would
This is all we
hire
do now.
salespeople that could go and farm and close and make the relationship, but cold calling and dialing for dollars and finding someone that'll literally just put their nose to the grindstone and fight it out and challenge objections and have a script or methodology they're going to go through. Like
They're
I don't know
not
if you
doing
know
that
this.
now. Never mind 10 years ago. They weren't doing it
Yeah,
then. They're
fair.
still not doing it. And
So
it's like,
this is funny because I actually don't know that you and I have ever talked about this, but I actually was in when I was 19, I got my Series 7 stockbroker's license in the state of Florida, and I was the youngest in the state of Florida. But one of the things I got really good at was just the cold calling. They had these giant number lists and everybody's name and a little bit of demographic, but that was about it. And you would just call. And the reason I was so successful was two reasons. I was so stupid. I literally followed the script. Like I literally followed the feel, felt, found. I understand, Carrie, how you feel. A lot of customers were afraid, at one point were afraid of doing that, but they found coming in and having a meeting with me. And so I was doing that, and from call to close was, I think one time the best it ever was 12%, and
that's good.
I would just
12%
crush it.
high.
I wouldn't set one-legged appointments. I would. It was just fun, and I was so like just in the moment of it that I just didn't realize that everybody else hated me in the whole org. But it was it was fun. And then the other reason was this one guy told me one time. He's like, "Listen, just smile for like 25 seconds before you pick up the phone. Like literally, just smile." He also said, "Go have a few drinks." So I suppose maybe take a good with the bad, but it was, I just did it.
This
I
help
did the
with the
dials.
rejection.
Yeah, I don't know, just blew through stop sign. I don't know what happened there. No, that's funny. So yeah, cold calling for me was an early experience. I wouldn't say I liked it, but I would say I was very effective at it, and it is an effective strategy to just get people out of the rut and get them in the door to have the conversation, right? Like I think as I understand it anyway.
I don't know. I find that like if you can't enjoy having conversations with smart people about interesting problems, then I mean I feel sorry for you.
Yeah,
And
fair.
that's what cold calling is, especially when you're calling peer to peer or business owner to business owner. I don't just want to talk about like trying to sell cold calling to an MSP, right? Like I've got a $2 million business and you've got a $2 million business. We're struggling with the same things. How are you solving this problem? We don't
Yeah.
have to talk about buying my shit the whole time. We can
Right.
talk about anything. And that's where I think people get hung up with the idea that every call has to be this like wildly effective,
Yeah,
gotta get the yes,
ABC. I
gotta get
got it.
the
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whereas what I want to do when I'm talking to people is find out like, what are you doing? How did you get to where you are? So perfect example, I had somebody call me last week and they were talking about like what they wanted to do. And I was like, well, explain to me what you're doing right now. And right now they're getting about 10 inbound leads a
Okay.
month from SEO and AdWords, which to me is like, okay, 10, great. And what are you spending on it? And they're like, hey, Reese, nice to see you.
What's up, buddy? Oh, good. I wasn't gonna cut you off, but that's my boy right there. So just wanted to say that.
The
Thank you for
tallest
stopping.
man in the channel.
No, the abnormally tallest person I've ever met in the channel, after thinking from Zoom days that he must be my height, because that's what we do. We normalize. The funny part was the day I actually physically met him and had to like up at him, right? I actually went back and looked at Zoom meetings, and sure as shit, his head was a lot closer to that ceiling than my head is, even with just exposition delineations,
Reese
right?
was
Like,
one of our first clients, like
oh,
one of the
really?
back, well, maybe like in the first 20 anyway. He was one of the original
Sure.
companies that took a chance on a brand new company in the channel.
Yeah.
So I got all kinds of time for
And
Reese
now he's in a
always.
billion-dollar company, as
I
I
saw
understand
that
it.
that
A
valuation
billion dollar,
yesterday
a
was pretty
unicorn before
exciting.
I get to say we're a
Woo!
unicorn. That's
Good job,
awesome, dude.
Electric.
Yeah, fantastic. Love you, Reese. Good to see you, buddy.
We did a
Anyway, so
webinar with Reese as well. He rebranded what to Tech Vera, and I can't
sure.
remember the name of the first company. It was a while
Mm.
ago. So
He'll plop it in the chat here if he wants to here.
yeah.
But you were saying, so you had this Yeah, buddy. Ride that unicorn all the way to your success, my friend. You deserve it. Oh, it's so good. So, anyways, you were saying you had this company that just recently you kind of were going down a
Oh
path
yeah,
of
so
executive.
he was getting like 10 leads a week, maybe 10, like a lot anyway, more than cold calling would procure for him,
Sure.
especially for the first year of cold calling. Cold calling is like you're not going to be revenue neutral until 7 or 9 months in, and anyone else who tells you otherwise is full of shit.
Yeah.
Don't
It's
listen to
just
that.
because of the time it takes to even get the call, get the answer,
Yeah.
get it on the books, have that turn into an actual fruition. Yeah, I
Well, and
totally
just
get it.
cold lists, right? When we call for vendors, right? We have a list of every MSP in North America. We know
Yeah,
their stack, we know how big they are. We know, like, we've been calling for vendors for 10 years as well.
sure.
And we keep all that data. So when
Seems
we
like a
learn,
valuable data pool that I hope you're very much protecting.
yes,
All
very
right.
much so.
Just making sure.
We just started actually selling that data to vendors that we like. So
Sure. Sure, fair.
uh, yeah, sorry, sidetracked again, but the, like, what he's doing
10
is
weeds a leak.
working,
Yeah,
right? Cold
right.
calling isn't going to move the needle the way that he wants it moved, right? He wants to add $1 million in ARR over the next 12 months. Cold calling isn't gonna do that. Cold
Okay.
calling might do that for him on year 2, but it's not gonna do it year 1. So I suggested that he double down on what he's doing already, right? I'm not in the business of, selling people things that they can't use or that won't work for them.
But you're just talking about adding more to the funnel. I mean, in
Well, yeah,
reality, right? Like,
well, sure, but what he wanted to do through cold calling was add $1 million in revenue. That's not going to happen year one.
yeah, I got you.
Right?
You
There's
couldn't
very
create
few
enough lists is
companies
the
in the
problem.
managed services space, I think, that could effectively go. And so, I mean, the size of
Oh,
companies.
I apologize. You were talking about a vendor selling to MSPs.
No,
Uh, oh,
MSP,
okay.
MSP, $1 million MSP that wanted to add $1 million in ARR.
I got you.
Right. So that would be his first year adding 1 million in ARR, right? It's not like he added half a
Yeah,
million
yeah,
last
yeah, yeah.
year. And so we just
Yeah.
like talked it out.
Well,
I was like, why aren't you doubling down on the things that you know work?
let
Right? Like,
alone I know what pain that gentleman or female is about to be in, because we went through that, right? And adding a million to a million, getting that first million to the second million hump, and then to 3 and 5 million.
yeah,
It takes reimagining even who you are operationally in a lot of ways, right? Like what used to work at that 1 million when you have 10 or so people that all fairly intimately know your customers and have a relationship and can talk the talk on every system they touch, to very delineated, very service oriented. I'm help desk. I'm now infrastructure admin. I'm now assist admin. I'm now, right. This like real change. For me, just going through each of those iterations was just massive. So let alone adding a million. And then on top of that, run rate. So I'm assuming his ARR target had to have been some form of a less next year, right? Like I'm assuming that it was only going to be 1.3
well,
million
there's
or
a really
something out of
good
that target.
calculation for figuring, like, when I look at what our year is going to look like, for example, I know that I'm going
Sure.
to sign 2 to 4 pieces of business every month. That's
Right.
plenty. That's going to replace any attrition, and we're going to grow by a modest amount quarter over
Sure.
quarter. Anything more than that, and my service delivery drops. And
Exactly.
so I know, like,
Yeah.
after 10 years of trial and error, and we had those years, right? We had the 120% growth year. We
God, they're
had
painful.
then we
They're
had like
great.
the
But,
solid 2 million year,
yeah.
3 years in a row. And we didn't realize how, like, for us anyway, like, cold calling is a very, like, one client, one person. And then we realized, well, no, it's not 1 to 1, because we got to hire 3 callers for every one that lasts. So for every one that makes it out of training, I got to hire 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm carrying
And
more
let
payroll
alone the
now,
other two that aren't very effective, and that's why they
if they
ultimately
show
leave, right?
up.
Like, yeah, 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 yeah.
Right? Like, there's the challenges of running a call center are mind-boggling, and people always say,
Sure.
like, oh, you must have the best cold callers and the best process and the best, like, no, we just understand how to work through the chaos that comes with a high turnover role.
Yeah.
Most of what we do is eliminate the headaches of having to replace somebody every 3 to 6 months, which is what happens with outbound cold calling, right? Nobody wakes up every day and says, gee, I'm excited to go to my telemarketing job. I'm so happy I was
Yeah.
hired, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you have to keep spirits high. And
I
you can't
know
have
one
all
person.
this work.
I know one. Yeah, that's who I was thinking of. Yeah, 100%.
I
No,
can't
that's
make as much
awesome.
cold calling as I can running a cold calling business. If I
True
could,
story.
I would
Yeah.
be cold calling. It's headache
Yeah.
free. It's simple. For me, it's like you start your job at 9 and at 5 o'clock you put down the phone and you leave. There are no telemarketing emergencies, period. Right? Like
True
I can put
story.
my out of office on for a month and it's not going to affect my business.
Only ROI. You know what's funny though is I heard you still get on and demonstrate though. You still do when
Oh
you're
yeah, I'm
dealing
not
with
gonna
some of
let the
these, you'll go and
callers tell
show.
me that it can't be done. That's like no way. Like
That's
it's
epic. Got any good stories on that? Like, do you have any of those one shining moments where you like flopped on a phone in front of somebody and it like made it make
oh
sense?
no, but when we first started the business, we worked remotely. Um, so I had to train people. Like I knew nothing about tech either, right? Like I was
Sure.
just like I was a personal trainer. I
I can
barely used
attest to
the
that.
computer, right?
So
I wasn't so I was like, okay, well, how are we going to train people? So at the beginning, I'd like dial the person I was training with my iPhone, and then
right.
I'd call the number of the person that we were calling so they could listen to me make the call. Never mind, like we didn't have a call
Nice.
center platform. People use their own phone numbers, their own computers. We had no
Oh
like it was
man,
just
dialing for
we
dollars from your own
bootstrapped
equipment.
like
Yeah,
crazy. It
yeah.
cost me $0 to start this company. So I got the
That's
phone
epic.
and guy's on the phone and I'm trying to train him. And I said, let me, about something like, I left a voicemail, like something about cold call process, but I think I said cold call problems or like I
Sure.
misspoke. And sometimes they have, you can hit 3 or whatever and you could go back out to 0
Right.
and it doesn't record the message. It lets you re-record it. So I tried that and I was like, oh, F
Oh,
bomb. Right. So now I'm on this guy's voicemail. I'm
with
swearing on his voicemail. I'm like, never mind, just hang up. Right. Like, so that's the voicemail is like me asking a question that doesn't make sense, me
which
dropping an F
ironically might have
bomb.
gotten a call back, I
I
bet, right?
did get
Because
a call.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I
That's
called
so
back and I
funny.
was like, look, I'm so, and it was, his name was Andre. He's from a Toronto based IT company.
Sure.
Um, God, what's his last name? I don't remember, but I ended up calling back and apologizing in the voicemail, and then he called back
That's
to see what
great.
we actually did, and we won that business. So, like, terrible, terrible example, but it still worked. Like most of the time, cold calling is just making the calls. Everyone thinks
Yeah.
there must be some magical way to do it, but it's just making the calls. Even if you're terrible at it, as long as you're doing it, you're going to be
There's a
successful
certain
once in a
percentage.
while.
Yeah, 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 100%. And making the calls. And then I think it really, really helps if you, and I'm this, right? Like if you genuinely care in the moment about what you're learning about, right? Like if you look like that starry eyed child that's listening to what they're speaking about, if you can get them talking, that's so like a valuable trait. Right. Like, for example, I think you do that really, really well where you're asked a question and then you're really engaged in the answer. Right. And you genuinely care. People feel genuine. I think people have a good genuine sensor. I mean, you're right though. Even if you really sucked at it, if you made 1,000 dials instead of 100 and had a 10% ratio instead of right or 2%
Yeah.
instead of 20, yeah. So you'd
The
still
problem is
like
like
end up
business
saying
owners don't have time to grind the phone, right? Like
right.
we did. I had nothing but time.
Well, you
So,
literally got paid for those dials though. There's a
yeah,
delineation. Yeah, yeah.
well, and I didn't charge enough when I first started the company
I
either,
bet
right? Well,
not.
finally somebody said yes. They're like, how much do you charge? And I was like, oh,
Well, I don't know,
$30
400.
an hour. And they
Yeah,
were like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
that
Sure.
sounds crazy. I was like, oh, I should have charged
Damn
this
it! It
much.
should have been 50. Yeah, no doubt.
And then we tried
That's funny.
pay for performance.
Right.
And we realized that it's not really fair on all the risk, right? We're still doing all the
Yeah,
work.
yeah. You don't have the
We're
upside
just
potential that the
doing like
business
what you've
does.
done in your market.
Well, and you don't have the upside potential. I think that's fair to state. You shouldn't take on all the risk because you don't have all the reward, right? Like
Correct.
the business does. If they're going to make much more off that lead, I would wager in the long ROI than you will on the short, instance-based performance. So I think that makes sense of going to an hourly rate. Are you still that way now, hourly?
Yeah, well, no, we just do flat rate now. We're a managed service. We tried to price ourselves very similarly to like not right down to the name, right? MSP,
Yeah.
flat monthly
Managed sales
pricing.
pros. Yeah, I love it. That's
Why
great.
are you doing something you don't understand?
Yeah, yeah.
Why? Right? Like we do
So
this is all we do. So, like you could hand your technology over to a third party that would understand it significantly better than you. We're able to remove the headache of outbound
yeah.
prospecting. You don't have to hire people. You
And
don't
the
have to figure out
attrition
how to
and the
integrate
hiring and
them.
yeah, yeah. You don't take
It's
on the
not,
employment risk of those people either, right? Like, and you
no.
do, right? And so I think that's that's cool to think about. It's like a PEO for your cold calling high
Yeah.
attrition role positions. And if you wanted to be a real security whiz, one of the larger risks in security is a high attrition company, right? In the sense that you have a lot of credentials being created and destroyed, used for short periods of times.
Oh, so we
Hopefully
stopped
you don't
doing
fail.
that. We
Yeah.
stopped doing that. We have agent 1, agent 2, agent 3,
Well,
agent 4.
as long as they're not
We just
touching
like
sensitive information. So what I was getting at is that you should be, still managing the users by name. And the reason is the identifiability. Like, so let's say somebody sells your entire database or grabs your entire database, which
they
obviously is a different
can't. Thank you,
conversation. So,
Doberman.
oh, is that Ian set you up a form? Good.
Oh, we
Fantastic.
went like the only thing we like paying a managed service provider didn't make sense for us. Right? We did that
Sure.
at first because we felt like we needed to eat our own dog food. So, but
Yeah.
we've
If you
got
were
these.
selling to that community, it made sense
But
to,
it's like a
yeah.
shitty $600 Dell thin client, right? Like throw it in the garbage and get another one. What am I paying
Yeah.
for somebody to troubleshoot this thing? Just get rid
Right.
of it. It
It's the
doesn't make sense to
commoditization
pay
argument.
X number
Yeah.
of dollars per hour to fix this box, right? So
Yeah.
at the call center, we just always had 10 extra machines set up. It was
Right.
simple, right? Yours isn't working. You go work on that one. We'll have Doberman take a look at that one when it's time.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
did buy managed security, and we bought that because of the contracts that we had to sign with the larger vendors that had these enormous data privacy requirements. We couldn't
Right.
risk their data getting out. And since we
Sure.
were bringing their data into our systems, right, we had to be pretty careful about how we did things. So everything was locked down to IP address. Once you leave the call center, you can't access anything.
Nice. I do like having those additional controls, and I know Ian quite well, so
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain he's fairly meticulous about that. So Shiva has a question for you, because this can't be for me, because I'm not that smart. So this has to be for you. So do you see resistance between someone wanting to be engaged on the first call for a demo versus call setting?
Can you ask that question differently?
Yeah, I'll try to pick it apart while he retypes it as to what he means. So do you see resistance between someone wanting to be engaged on the first call for a demo versus call setting? I'm assuming what he's talking about is like, I'm calling, let's have a demo right now versus setting an
Oh, we
appointment down the
never
road.
like we don't demo. So I mean, we're an
Okay.
appointment setting company. So that like for us, that isn't
That is
that's
the
not
other half
something
you
I
do.
measure
That's
because we
yeah.
don't demo right then and there. And if somebody
Re-ask it if I
suggested that
got it
I might
wrong.
have an hour available to look at something right now, I'd be like, no, come on. Like I'm running a business here. I don't have a random hour in the middle of the day. And if I
Yeah,
do,
yeah.
I don't want to spend it looking at this.
Well, and we're starting. I'm wondering what shift happens as you start getting to like much more on-demand research and on-demand consumption type things, right? Like, I mean, as you start giving people more and more of a feel of some of that, the early sales process, I suppose, by their research side. I don't know. There was a report from Forrester recently that people far prefer to research products, especially products, maybe not services. Services would be a little bit delineable, but self demos, self walkthroughs. Like that's how
Yeah, I
I
mean,
like
you
to
can't really
consume things.
demonstrate managed services, and you can't even
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
can't
Service
quote like
based.
it's something that you can't automate, right? You need to understand the environment before you could even throw a number out there. Like you could ballpark based on number of desktops, I suppose, and that's one of the ways
Sure.
we qualify. Like how many computers are there? How many servers are there? Who are you
That's
getting
a great
support from right
question.
now?
Do you have a big breadth of the size of the customers you're calling on? Like, do you have
Yeah.
some where you're calling 2 and 3 person offices and that's their desired
No, you
market?
never make a return on your investment calling into 2 and 3 person companies for an MSP, right? So if they're
Yeah.
going to pay
I
me
was curious.
$6,000 a month, in order for them to have a return on investment, they need to be charging at least $100 a month for managed services, right? Per
Yeah.
desktop per month.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I was just curious as there was a spread as MSPs asked for this. Like, what's the smallest size that they call as their, that you see as
For me,
MSPs?
I wouldn't take on a client that wanted to work with anybody below 20 desktops.
So
Right?
20
If
is
you
the
want to,
number.
you want it has to be 20 or 20 or higher, $100 a month or higher. Otherwise, the return on investment will never be there. And we have an ROI
Yeah.
calculator. So if anybody's watching and they want to go and see if they would be able to make money cold calling,
Sure.
it's managedsalespros.com/cold calling ROI calculator.
Cool.
Or maybe just Google it.
Yeah, www.just
Google
sorry,
Managed
that's
Sales Pros ROI calculator, and it'll tell you, it'll
Google
spit out
foo.
exactly how much you should expect
Yeah.
from a 2-year cold calling engagement.
And I'm assuming you're meaning $100 per user per month
Yeah.
of those. Yeah. Okay. That makes
So
sense.
that's like at bare
That'd be a
minimum.
$2,000 contract essentially is what you're looking at as the floor for that type of
Yeah,
a
like to
service.
make a 200% return on investment over 2 years, you would need to be charging $100 a month minimum.
Okay.
And on average, we
Most
see
people
about
are, I would wager,
7
right?
to 9 new deals in the first 2 years with a company. And then, Doberman's going on their 3rd or 4th year with us, and, they get 5 or 6 meetings every month like clockwork.
Yeah.
But most clients don't have the patience to stick it out.
Yeah, when they're getting one every 2 or 3 months or something in the
Well,
initial
I mean,
months.
if I only sent them one meeting every month and that meeting closed every month, I would never have a problem, right?
True
Like
story.
people would pay me whatever for that. But if you looked at your actual cost of acquisition, which most MSPs don't
Most
know,
people
like when
don't
I
know.
ask them,
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah, yeah, I bet not.
they're like, "Oh, that sounds really expensive." And I think, okay, well,
What's your cost of
what did
acquisition?
it
Well, I
cost
don't
you to
know.
sign your
Yeah.
last client? Do you even know that number? And
Right.
like
Yeah.
nobody knows. And I'm like, all right, well, add up all your
Salesperson's
sales
revenue and
expenses.
cost and pay
Yeah,
and
put
all
the
expenses
salaries
and
in and the cogs and everything, and then divide that by the number of clients you signed last year. What did it cost you to sign new clients?
yeah, yeah. And then what's
Right.
your
So
attrition rate out of that?
if it's less than $6,000 a month, right? Like then okay, do that instead. But most of
Yeah.
the time they haven't delineated down that far.
You hit actually a good point, I think that comes into this. So like you're getting the appointment to the point that and I'll tell you, do you know where my beard started? This is a little tangent, but you know how my beard started? It's his birthday today, so I'll call him out if he's watching. So my sales guy was a guy named Randy, Randall Aronis, and he's a fantastic gentleman, brilliant sales professional, can just great guy, but very much madman, polished. I wear a suit every day. You should too. And I had this little goatee. And one day I wasn't shaving much. I'd let it kind of grow out and get bushy and a little bit of side fuzz. And he goes, "Hey, if you don't shave that thing and clean up, I may not invite you to any more important sales meetings." I said, "Well, Randall," and I called him Randall because I like to do it. He's Randy. But I said, "Randall, I'd wager you're incorrect." So that was the beginning. And I grew out this disgusting rat goatee that was like
Oh,
this long with nothing on the side. It was just
oh, it
hideous.
sounds terrible.
And it got to the point that Chris Hoos, when he was sending me in to talk with somebody that was a big process, because I was the lead tech resource, I could talk to people, I could sell. And so I'd come in and be the sales engineer. And when they would go, "Let Matt get out 2 sentences before you judge him, please." Like they would say that legit as they were setting the appointment. Like don't throw him out when you see him in the lobby in that camera. But that's what started, the beard. But the point I wanted to make was earlier you said, we're going to get them X number of appointments, right? And that's the goal. And if they close, they close. And I think the point is that doesn't that get into like the understanding of how successful their salespeople actually already are on a ratio? Like,
Let's just not go there, right?
no,
Like people think that like it doesn't matter how many times I say like this is how it works. What they hear is this is how it works for everyone else, but we're better, so we're going to be different. And it's
Mm.
like, put me in front of someone, Carrie, I can close them. And I'm like,
Yeah.
evidence to the contrary. Thank you. I've worked with 1,000 MSPs now. Every one of them, without fail, said that on the sales call. Put me in
Yeah.
front of anyone, I can get the deal. And then like
Ugh.
what they're saying is, put me in front of somebody that my friend Brad introduced me to, and I can get the deal, right? So everyone was used to referral appointments, and we
Yeah.
come rolling in with like cold appointments, and nobody wants to do any work, right? Like it's not just you can't just meet with
Yeah.
them and then send them a proposal and then sign it.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
like
This
you're
is
going to
a
have to one wait out their current provider half the time. So one
yeah
of the things
long
we
sales
started
cycle.
doing was nurturing. Instead of just scheduling anybody that would meet, we only schedule things that are viable. So it has to be within a certain amount of time before their contract is renewing. There's no point in meeting with somebody who just signed a 3-year deal.
Yeah, they're going to
If
forget
they're
in
not
a
going
year and a half or
to
2
they're not going
years.
to
Yeah.
break that engagement.
It'll be
Reasonable
re
business
cold
owners
again.
don't do that.
Yeah. No doubt. No
So we
doubt.
like to like nurture the lead until it's viable. So that means in our vernacular, a viable lead has less than 6 months remaining on their current managed agreement
Sure.
and a budget that's appropriate for the person that's selling to them. Right? So if they're spending $500 a month on IT support, there's no way you're going to get them to spend 5,000, right? If
Yeah.
they're already underpaying and they're
Yeah.
getting them above that is going to be challenging.
Yeah, I like that you speak towards the timeliness of it, right? Because that's a whole nother dimension on setting them up for success, right? So, in my opinion, Dan Johnson, cold or not, you have to develop a relationship and trust. Dan Johnson, brilliant business owner as well. I
In
actually,
Logic, Dan Johnson,
yeah, 100%.
another managed sales pros client.
What? Oh, that's fantastic.
So
That's
let's count
fantastic.
up the number of exited companies that Managed Sales Pros supported over the course of the last 10
Hey,
years. We
whoa,
got a
that may or
unicorn on
may,
here.
whoa.
Add
I
that to
don't know
my
about,
unicorn feather in
yeah,
the
yeah.
cap.
That is a pretty cool feather in the cap, though, right? Like, that's
Datto,
fantastic. Yep.
OpenDNS.
Oh,
Um,
really? That's so
yeah.
good. I didn't know that. That's right. You
Um,
did vendors. I forgot on the early
yeah.
days too. Tell me. So I don't want to miss out talking about the new thing you're doing because I'm very interested in that as well. So let's not. I don't want to burn all the time on this. We got about 15 minutes left or so. But so tell me a little bit about that. So on the vendor side, you're calling a very different constituency, one that you might have formed quite the relationship with. Is that fair? Like a lot of the MSPs, one of them you
Mhm.
married, as I understand it. So,
Yeah.
you know.
The only way I can get them to keep taking my calls. I'm a terrible client.
It does put you really high up on the pumpkin planting list, doesn't it? Like it gets you way up on that value proposition. You're not getting that call.
I actually didn't really understand. It's not like I didn't understand the challenges that MSPs were facing day to day, but looking at it from the inside, after I married Ian, and spent more time in his office, like at his
Yeah.
business, seeing what happened there day to day. It made me a far more empathetic for every IT
Oh,
company I ever hired.
oh my gosh. No, you just pulled my string. You absolutely should include bringing your clients into your MSP and in bringing them in. Why the hell do you think reality shows exist? People want to see how the sausage is made
No, I don't
sometimes.
think that's
I
true.
do.
I think unless you've got like Nucleus Networks in Toronto, and they exited a while ago, but
Yeah,
they had the most beautiful office I had ever seen in my entire life. It overlooked the ocean in Vancouver. It was in a beautiful area, and it was all exposed brick. If you got an office like that, yeah, bring your clients in.
sure.
If you're working
Okay.
in some shitty wood paneled basement somewhere, no, don't bring your
All right.
client in.
Okay. Fine, Carrie. So, with a damn grain of salt, if you have a decent office in which you can
Yeah,
show
but
off
how
your
many offices,
operations,
like when you look at that, like one, how many
yeah.
cities have an office like that, right? If you've got an MSP in the middle
Oh,
of
but
nowhere, Kansas, you
I
don't have
well,
a
no,
beautiful
we
ocean view
did. We had a
available to
beautiful
you.
no, but you know what we did have? We built our new office when we got to about 46 employees. We built a new office. You brought the guests in through the front door. I mean, this is Chris Hoos, right? So in through glass. Right there, you have the glass of a fairly well set up OPSEC, right? So their screens aren't being seen. Service desk, the help desk area, all right there in a nice glass kind of room that you could see as you walked up to the conference room that also had similar glass to be able to see. So you could see the buzz and the activity and all the collaboration. And then you could walk them around that and go through all the offices. So like he kind of forced people to be through. So you can create an experience, I guess is my point, that doesn't have
Well,
to be
look
the
at
outward
Datto's
view. Yeah.
office. Have you been to Datto's office in Connecticut?
I have. I've been to the studio at least. I've been to
Stunning.
the
It's
Wallingford. Oh my
amazing.
Lord.
I don't
It's
even know if they have,
nuts.
I didn't go to the studio, but I remember like we went in there. This was like back when Tracy and I first signed them as clients. And this was like way, way back in the day. Datto was one of our biggest and first vendor clients.
Oh, you brought me back to course. Thank you. Yes, about the vendors and talking.
And it
Thank
was,
you.
I walked into their office and I was just like, I remember being super impressed by everything. Like they've got this, like, it's like, it's what I assume NASA must look like. It's
That's awesome.
just things that are blinking and beeping in an enormous globe and every inside. It was like such an interesting place. And then there was the big ball pits. So
That's
like,
nice.
but an interesting contrast of tech and fun. And it just looked like a place like if I was going to go work somewhere, like walking through that office, I was like, it's the kind of place where if somebody toured you, you'd be like, I want to work here.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
place is amazing. Like,
That's
how
the
do I get
intention.
hired here? What do I need to do? Like, you'd be very excited about it.
That's awesome. The ball pit for sure. That's a blast. So one of the things I want to talk about. So after this new iteration now, what are you doing now? Tell me about what Richardson. New tongue just got
Mhm.
installed yesterday. Richardson and Richardson Consulting, R&R.
Right. Ian and I obviously started a consulting practice. Ian exited from his MSP last year. And one of the tools or systems that Ian used to build his MSP was Patterson's StratOp. And for anybody who's watching and isn't familiar with StratOp, startup was founded by a guy named Tom Patterson. He was also responsible for, I think he built the technology for the ATM pin pad. He built rides at Disney World. He was, hired by governments to create plans for much larger and secretive things, right? Like Ian understands that. I'm loving the beard. I might wear this all the time. I think Ian and I are going to enjoy it later.
Oh Lord, that's just took it just a step outside of skosh. That beard is chaos.
Sworn yet.
Hey, you've done great. We have
Thank
not
you.
gotten in the Tim Choquette swear jar yet.
No, I
we're
haven't
doing
even.
great.
I know. I'm trying. That's actually on my. I was on I had my list of things I wanted to achieve this year.
Don't get Matt demonetized. Oh, I thought
was
you
definitely on that list because I had no problem. I tried to change my image a little bit this year. I haven't been wearing anything glittery.
Sure.
I got normal. Well, not today, but I grew my hair out normal. I was just trying to So for consulting, I think for cold calling, no one cares, right? Like no one even knows what you look like. You're on the phone, but if you're going to walk into somebody's office and work with them to build a strategic plan around how they're going to grow their business, I think people want you to look more like their lawyer and less like their Uber driver.
Yeah.
Right? So
100%.
my goal was okay, well, I knew that this was coming. I knew this was a change that we were going to be making and that we were going to start focusing more on consulting, and Managed Sales Pros practically runs itself by now. So I'm not required for day-to-day operations there, which gives me more time to, find fake beards right before a podcast.
Sure. No, I think you did impressively. Like I said in the beginning, you've literally set the bar for any other female in this Beard Banter.
Well, for any female that would like a fake beard on Beard Banter, all I did was take my Halo hair extensions and turn them around. So.
It's perfect though. You look like Gandalf the Grey. Like it's amazing.
Yeah, well, I was practicing my
Yeah. And then you have the Hobbit pipe maybe as well, right?
A cigar.
So Jimmy goes, yeah, swearing is not. Oh, Dom Kirby sang your praises today, by the way. He's like, Carrie reached out and she's sending me cigar samples.
Oh yeah, I'm going through the humidor to find him some things so that then we.
Oh, he was so excited.
We don't have a basis for comparison because he doesn't have a regular smoke. It's hard to tell somebody what they might like if they're not sure themselves. So I'll send him.
I don't know, and you're like, well, I'll send you a few when you sit out in the fire pit in the backyard. Just think.
I made more money off cigars than any other marketing initiative we ever tried.
That's cool.
So the first time I could actually trace revenue back to a cigar was I brought a humidor to the Microsoft World Partner Conference in Orlando.
Yeah,
6 years ago. And I was like the Pied Piper, right? I had this humidor and everyone's got free drinks in their hands already. It's a Microsoft event. No one's paying for anything. So there's no reason for somebody to talk to you, or there is no.
But if you've got a cigar and a cutter,
walk through the room with a humidor, and all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh, where are you going?" And then it takes a special kind of jerk to take a cigar, light it up, and walk away, right?
Oh, 100%.
People sit down. I've got them for an hour, and I don't really go into what we do. I just oh no, if you'd like a cigar, please. And I never bring a cigar I wouldn't smoke myself, so they're always nice. And people just sat down. What do you do? And we do this. Oh, that's interesting. And boom. Right. So now at events, I just sit out on the patio and wait for people to walk by.
So my two quick cigar stories. Jimmy said he's been giving out cigars at the last 4 or 5 events. Been awesome, which I agree. And I'm not much of a smoker, right? Like I will smoke a cigar every now and again. So almost anytime I am smoking a cigar, I think about Bob Kosis. Bob Kosis, no matter where he is near a cigar store. Period.
Yeah.
It just seems to be the way. And he just won an award just recently, I saw, for large enterprise sales, but enterprise sales executive of the year. So congrats, Bob. But yeah, anytime I smoke a cigar, I think of Bob, and apparently Jimmy now a little bit. But yeah, it was funny. I guess how did that happen with Dom? He just reached out and was like, "Hey, that cigar is really cool," or something.
No, I posted something on LinkedIn about Richardson and Richardson. One of the things that I've been doing is taking the data that managed. I mean, we've got 10 years of data, right? Every call we ever made on behalf of any vendor that we ever made a call for, we know everything. We know everything about the stack. Like, you want a list of ConnectWise users? We got it. You want a list of ConnectWise users, over 1,000 endpoints who also use Huntress? We have that too, right? Like, we mix and match any way you like. We can.
Yeah, because of the nature of what you did. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but now that we're analyzing it more, not only can we figure out things like that, but you want to know does anyone know when a MSP is most likely to change BDR vendors? Q1. I don't know why it is, but in Q1, people take far more meetings about changing BDRs.
Gotcha. Okay, that's the answer to my next question. I think. Thank you, because it's about how do you get that data and ensure that it stays up to date. And you just answered it for
Well,
me
if you've
because I'm
got 20
calling for other
callers
vendors.
calling
Yeah,
out,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and they're saying no, I'm using Veeam right now, and I
But we can
follow. That's
also
really
see
cool.
from the changes when, so let's say we've got, we put an MSP into the system in 2015 after meeting them at DataCon.
Wherever, sure.
We can watch that company. If you look along, Zoho has a feature where it shows you every change that's ever been made to the file. So we can see that they were a data user, then they switched to something else, right? Then they switched to something else. And they took 4
Yeah.
meetings about this. They took 3 meetings about that. They're obviously in the market for something security focused, right? So we know that because they took a meeting from Huntress, or they took a meeting from
Have you
one of our
have you
other
done any
cybersecurity
data
clients.
science on any of this? I mean, in the sense that you could probably answer. I mean, this is kind of Gradient's thought of what they're trying to do, right? Obviously, by if you will, I would guess from the outside looking in. But have you done any like digging into this data from a data science perspective to start predicting some of these things? Like your data set would be very valuable for a an annual report for say for someone or
I
like, lots
feel
of cool
like
stuff.
I'm surprised that a vendor didn't just buy managed sales pros, right? Honestly, to
For
take
answers
that,
for the data itself.
right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
just
yeah.
for the data, like the callers, yeah, we're good at what we do, but I mean,
There's a
that,
one-to-one output to that relationship that's not as valuable, I think, as the data set. Like I think, anyways, you open my eyes on that. I think the data set itself and seeing the shift and when the delta. Back to this user that, and I'll look it up later who this is, and thank you. But the data-driven sales, right? Like I don't have to waste effort somewhere I'm not going to get any
no,
value,
like we don't have to
right?
call
Like
5,000 MSPs to get those
yeah,
100 meetings. We have to call 1,000 MSPs to get those 100
yeah,
meetings.
totally, because you're being much more intelligent about when you, why,
But
and what.
half the
Yeah,
time, like a new vendor will come into the channel and they'll have like a hypothesis on where they're going to succeed, right? Or what they want, right? So somebody will be like, hey, Carrie, I want you to introduce me to every MSP with more than 500 employees in North America.
yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah,
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 there's like
yeah.
4 of them. I'm happy to introduce you to them.
Yeah,
They're all
sure.
in
I could meet a few of them. I know of one. I came from it, right? And another one
right?
was $1 billion unicorn just recently, potentially. So, yeah.
So it's not like there are times when MSPs are more likely to change providers, but we're finding really interesting things like companies that use Datto between 300 and 500 endpoints. They're the happiest BDR clients, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost not worth bothering calling a Datto client with
That
under
and
500 endpoints because they are
yeah.
so happy at that level.
Well, and
Right?
the
They go
operational
up to 1,000
capabilities for that
endpoints, and all of a
level.
sudden everybody's in play again. So something's happening between 500, 300 to 500 endpoints and 1,000 endpoints. Something's happening. So either something's
Yep.
happening to every MSP at that stage. Maybe their
Yep.
contract expires right
Nope.
around the time they hit 1,000 endpoints, or
Nope.
maybe service delivery changes, or
Nope. They
I
finally
don't know.
get to enough humans that they start to be able to have a dedicated person to manage backup in there. There are cheaper options. That would be my gut. That's my
Ah,
prediction.
that makes
Because we
sense.
went through that, right? We eventually had a dedicated backup person. It allowed us to use Veeam. Veeam was a lot cheaper. We could still deploy it in the same ways. And so, but I still, no love lost for Datto. I love me some Datto. It's fantastic.
Oh
Set it and
yeah,
forget.
no,
It's like the
Datto, like
Ronco steamer of backups, right? Like it's
that
kind of a
Datto
set
put
up
us
and
on the
forget it.
map. Like I don't think we would have the company that we have today. I mean, first it was Open DNS, so we're
Yeah.
always going to
I
be
was a
grateful
big
to Tuna
OpenDNS
and
consumer.
Andrew and that
Yep.
whole crew, like for the faith that they put in us, because
Yeah.
nobody knew who we are at where that
Andrew
at that.
Kaiser. I'm assuming you're
Mhm.
talking about
Yeah,
another
Andrew.
amazing human. Yeah, another
Yeah,
amazing
it's
human. Yeah.
so much fun to watch them over at Huntress now, like knowing that they
Oh,
kind of got the band back together and they all
yeah.
work really well
Oh,
together.
yeah. They
And
don't
like
have
watching
Cisco
Tracy
over
be
their
a part of that
shoulder.
is like
Yeah,
it's
sorry.
amazing.
That's
And
fantastic.
so
Oh, that's right, because you're really close to Tracy Arisco,
Tracy
right?
is my sister,
Oh, that's
like
fairly
my
close.
actual
No, no,
sister.
no. I didn't think you meant sister, but I thought you meant sister.
Yeah, but
That's
people don't know
fantastic.
that. Like
I didn't know
so,
that. Yeah, yeah. I just thought you guys were really close and seemed to act about the same. It was funny. I needed to borrow Austin for like 2 minutes the other day at a show, and I was like, "Can I borrow?" She's okay, but I was like, "Okay, fair enough."
did you have to ask Tracy?
Yeah, she was there. She was teasing me, but yeah, I ran into her. I think also in Phoenix. I don't remember, but yeah, that was
Well,
so,
Tracy
so
was our integrator for sure, right? Tracy was the driving force behind
right.
implementing any sort of strategic anything at Managed Sales Pros. Because if I had it my way, I'd just be picking up the phone, putting down the phone, picking up the phone, putting down the
Who
phone.
led the visionary side?
I mean, I was the visionary, of
Yeah.
course, but
Okay.
Tracy was the one that pushed traction on us to begin with, right? Like she
Yep.
wanted to do it years ago. This is a sore spot between Tracy and I. So if she's watching today, she can. So
Or later.
Tracy, like read this. She wanted me to read the book, so I read the book, and I'm like, this book is effing boring. No,
Yeah.
we're not doing
Yeah.
this. I'm not doing this. And she was like, oh, fine. And then like we flatlined at the $2 million mark for a couple of
Yep.
years. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, we got to do something different. And everybody had been
Maybe we
saying,
should
hey,
try
Gary, join
traction.
EO,
Yeah.
join EO, join EO. So I joined
Yeah.
EO.
Yeah.
And EO was life changing. So if there's anybody watching today who's been thinking about it, like EO was one of the best decisions I ever made. And
And when
EOS,
you say EOS?
the entrepreneurs organization. So
Ah,
you
okay,
need
thank you.
$1 million in revenue to join. They have EO accelerators in bigger cities as well. So if you're a small business, they'll teach you the ins and outs of it. But it was like I sat in the room with 10 people, all of them from different kinds of businesses, and all of them sharing how they overcame specific problems that I was having in my business. So just people
Yeah.
very willing to give of their own time. So anyway, I'm going to EO. We're in like year 2, and they taught me how to read my books. Right, I didn't know how to
Sure.
read a P&L. I had a $2 million business. I didn't know what any of it meant. I was like, did we hit payroll? Awesome. And then
Right. Is anybody
we
going to
had
quit
this
because I didn't pay them?
terrible,
Huzzah. Yeah,
right?
that's awesome.
We were sitting around a table at an IT event once, and everyone was like, "How long did it take you to get to $1 million?" And everyone was like, "Oh, 10 years, 16 years." And I'm like, "A year and a half?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But cold calling isn't like anything else, right? We don't have
Well, it's the
huge
top of the funnel
cogs.
spending, right? Too. It's also the literally top of the funnel spending. Like I putting leads in the top of, so you probably have a
But
pretty good sales path.
everybody wants cold calling, right? When they find out
Yeah.
how much it costs to outsource their cold calling, they're not so keen on it anymore. But like
Yeah.
that was anyway. So I joined EO, and then everyone in EO, at least everyone in my chapter of EO in Las Vegas, was using EOS or Traction.
Oh, traction's
And
what got us where
so
we
I come
were.
into the office one day, and I'm like, "We're going to do Traction, and we're going to get
She's
Jason
like, that's
Rath
the thing you
to
said
participate in it."
crap about 2 years
Right,
ago.
right. So
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of being happy that I was like finally coming around, she was so angry because
That's
I would
so
listen to
good.
these guys, but I didn't listen to her, and she was right all
Yeah.
along, like
Oh,
always.
that's great.
Tracy,
And
by
you
the
just
way,
said it. I heard it
right
right here,
along.
folks. Yeah, yeah. You just said it right there, folks. She just apologized to her sister. We're healing families on this show right here.
That's
Healing
right.
families. Well, we are at the top of the hour. I want to be respectful of everybody's
That was
time.
fast.
It just does. When two friends get together and chat and stroke their beards about wonderful life things, it just goes quickly. But I really appreciate you getting to dig into like the world of cold calling and the Carrie, I almost did it, the Carrie Richardson's world, right? So I'm
I'm
excited
getting
to
used to
see.
that too.
I don't know what's wrong with me. It's just I have this like patternization of humans that I meet, and then like the changing of that is really tough.
Oh,
Anyways,
I'm
yeah.
still not signing. I'm still
Oh,
signing Gary
still
Simpson.
still Simpson it? Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
did that today. I was like, Dom goes, I got cigars from Carrie. And I was like, I don't know many Carries. So I'm assuming Carrie Simpson. Wait, crap. Richardson. And he laughed. You, haha, right back.
Simpson, I'm hyphenating. Like, that's too many words. No one's ever gonna
That's
get
too
that
much.
email
Lots
right.
of
So,
letters. Yeah.
yeah.
They would win you a fortune on Wheel of Fortune, though. So, but
Well,
all
thank
right,
you for
Carrie.
having me today, Matt. I
Thank you for
appreciate
being
you.
here. You
Thank
rock.
you for everybody who showed up too. It was nice
Yeah,
to see
we had a good
everyone.
chat.
You got a
See
good
ya.
roster of Managed Sales Pros clients there.
I know there's like 3 or 4 or 5 at least. They must
Mhm.
love you and follow you for your success you've made for them. So wonderful.